Hello, and welcome to episode 33 of the What If South is Up podcast, where we talk about the ups and downs of creating worlds from scratch and all the misadventures we experience along the way. In a nutshell, how to wing it like an author. My name is Derek Hall, creator of the Crimson Prophecy and Horizon Gamelit series, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Smashwords, and just about anywhere else you might want to find an ebook. I am here with my freshly waterlogged co-host, Christina Xtina Lefebvre.
Spoilers, don't tell them. Jeez. My name is Christina Xtina Lefebvre, and I'm in the middle of building my first world, a magical parallel Earth where colonization never happened in the Americas, and reworking my first novel with the working title of Cogs and Claws. So, Mr. Derek, what are you drinking today?
I have a concoction
Ooh,
that I
love
created
concoctions.
on a whim
I love concoctions.
for no apparent reason. I do too, obviously. I have Sour Patch Watermelon Bourbon.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Little
like the
vodka
bourbon is called that, or did you
No.
create a thing and
I
this is what
made
you're
it.
calling it?
I dissolved a
Ah.
bunch of Sour Patch Watermelon candies in some bourbon.
Did it take
and
like
it's
minutes or like
delicious.
hours? Did it
Days.
like forever?
Days.
Days. I
It works
applaud
really
your
good with gummy
fortitude.
bears and vodka. It works really well with regular Sour Patch Kids and vodka, but the watermelon ones work really good with bourbon.
So are you puckering?
No, it's actually not sour anymore so much, but you get a little bit of the sweet and you get the watermelon flavor.
I do love me a good watermelon flavor.
The gummy peach rings also work really well in bourbon.
I love a good peach too.
Peach and bourbon is a match made in heaven. It's good stuff.
Well,
I love anything peach with a good bourbon.
Southern Comfort is actually like a peach apricot bourbon if you actually look at the formula. So you know I love it.
Except they can't legally call it bourbon because the alcohol content's too low.
Right, it's a liqueur, and if anyone tries to, I love drinking Southern Comfort straight because everyone thinks I'm a badass, but it's a liqueur. So whatever,
It doesn't even count as hard alcohol.
it's a
Some places.
liqueur. It's
Yeah.
fine. Like if you
Yeah.
think I'm a badass, I'm fine with that, dude. I love the facade,
Yeah, go drink your brandy, and I'll stick to this.
and I'm a fantasy writer, right? So I love the
Right?
fantasy of them thinking I'm a badass.
Right?
Anyways,
It is pure fantasy. What do you have this week?
Nothing special. It's become kind of like a normal thing for me. It's the berries and cream, whipped vodka, whipped vanilla vodka, and wild berry seltzer. It's
I'm
just
gonna have to try that.
well, it's not that there's so much special as much as I went to the liquor store and I was in a hurry. We just had a snowstorm and I had to go check our Airbnb, the driveway, because someone's staying there. And I was in a hurry and I had to work a little bit late. And my husband's not feeling well because he got his flu shot yesterday. And,
Mhm.
I'm just rushing around and I'm not even thinking, oh my gosh, I need to up Derek in the drink tonight, the concoction department. So I failed and I just got my normal stuff. I just went to my normal shelf, picked my normal stuff. But yes, so that's what I have tonight is berries and cream.
That is
So,
completely
there you
fair.
go. Thank you.
I will say that if you can find proper hardcore moonshine, good old Mountain Dew, the proper old school White Lightning moonshine, and dissolve a bunch of Skittles in it, it's really fucking good.
My mouth is slavering just thinking about it. I might like that one.
That's actually, it's really good. It goes down like candy. You don't realize you're getting drunk until it's too late.
I love those. Love it.
Oh, I do too. They're dangerous, but I love them. Well, what have you been reading or watching?
Well, let's see. Oh, I actually finished something. Yay! Small applause. Yay! I finished Meg Lindsay's The Unfortunate Legacy of Mr. Hyde. Friggin' fantastic. Highly
Right.
recommend.
Isn't it
It's
great?
it was awesome. Um, and I binged Young Sheldon. It finally came on, and I binged it. Um, and there was a line in that whole thing I binged that actually blew me away. When I talk about writing, just
Mhm,
I actually had to pause the show and I had to stop and think about this. And the young Sheldon character says that he was referring to how superheroes become superheroes,
mhm.
and it's all about overcoming their worst fear.
Yeah,
And it just made me stop. I literally stopped the show and started and pulled out a notebook. How do I get my character to be a superhero? What is her greatest fear, and how can I show that? How can I represent that? How can I show that she's become a superhero because she overcame that worst fear? So that was actually something unexpected from that show.
yeah, absolutely.
So that was interesting. What about you? You got anything interesting to share?
Well, I'm finally done with Cradle. It's
You were
over.
last time, yay!
I know. It's
Ah,
done, but I've started new things, and I am I am reading the inside of my eyelids because my brain won't work.
I hate when that happens.
I know. Everything just disappeared. Um
Yep.
no, I am reading a I don't remember the exact title of the book, but it is the chronological like release order first book of the Witcher series.
Oh,
Because there were prequels and things written later and that go first in the timeline, and I've had people arguing about read it in timeline order, read it in release order, and I finally just decided I'm reading it in release order. So I've started on that, and it was translated from Romanian, I think, or
really?
Czech or something like that, because that's the language it was originally written in. So it's a little bit clunky in places, but I'm having fun with it. It's
Oh,
really good.
fascinating.
Yep. And as for watching, I haven't really been watching anything. I haven't had time,
Yeah.
but the occasional episode or two of something familiar, which recently has tended to be Home Improvement.
Really?
Yeah, I love Home
Huh.
Improvement. Cracks me up every
Huh.
time.
Well, I like that better than his second show, which was
Last Man Standing, and I love that one too.
yeah, I do not like that one.
A
Sorry.
lot of people don't.
I am not a fan. Nope. I was of like the first season, then afterwards it took a detour and I was like, "Nah, I'm done with
Yeah,
this."
but I love Tim Allen. I've always loved Tim Allen. So,
Yep. I was just watching with hubby over the holidays we were watching the Santa Clauses.
hmm
He's got 2 seasons of the Santa Clauses. It's just it's just brain dead dumb fun. So, anyways, um moving on. So, what author problems have you encountered and or
I am not a
solved?
horse. I don't canter anywhere.
It might be fun. Okay.
I get along well with a decanter because that involves booze.
What have you decanted lately? Okay, we already covered that. All right. What author problems have you encountered and or solved since our last episode?
My current issue is simply finding time to even work on my story, let alone actually solve any of my lingering issues.
Mm-hmm.
And shortly behind that on the list, I've been fighting the urge to start completely new things and haven't been entirely successful, as our little critique group can attest, because I've been throwing things in there. So I haven't
Yep.
really done anything, but my life has been crazy. Like I said before, I started a new job and I've got a lot of stuff going on, and I'm just trying to settle into a new schedule before I dive too deeply back into the book.
Hey,
But what about
valid.
you?
Totally valid. Totally
Great.
valid life. Yep, totally valid. Okay. So, um as everyone who is a longtime listener knows, I've started reworking my outline. I'm still working on it. Um, uh, and recently I was, kind of thumbing through some of my favorite authors slash mentor podcasters, um, some of the podcasts, and I decided to try to put into words what something is called the big dramatic question. Have you heard of this? The big dramatic question.
Hmm.
So this is the question that answers the why in the story. It basically encapsulates the theme or the gist of the story. For instance, in like the Hunger Games, the MDQ, the major dramatic question, is will Katniss survive the Hunger Games? And with these one, two, three, four, five, six words, right? We know the answer is going to be yes. Every dramatic question should, we all know it's going to be yes, but it helps the author. With these six words, we kind of can boil down the story to its vital components. Like, will Katniss survive? So we know the stakes are pretty high, right? Will she
Hmm.
survive? This means that the stakes are fairly steep. The Hunger Games. So what does a game have to do with surviving? And what's hunger have to do with it? So this dramatic question, will Katniss survive the Hunger Games, really, really encapsulates that story. So I've been trying to encapsulate my story in such a question. So I've been working on my MDQ, and it turns out it's not as easy as one would think.
No, it's
Um,
not.
it's not as easy as one would think, but how I'm going to use it is I'm going to keep this in each one of my scenes as a bullet point. How does this scene um, sideline impact affect um, trans touch this question? And if the scene can't somehow tie into this major dramatic question that I developed, which I shall not share because it would be a spoiler, um, then that scene needs to be reworked. So
Hmm.
I'm doing some deep diving into my outlining in that method, but
Hmm.
that's been pretty enlightening. But that's what I've
Are
been
you
working on.
building a separate? Well, you only have the one POV, don't you?
N- so I'm fighting with that because for the most part, when you talk about a YA novel, they
Hmm.
typically are in one POV.
Hmm.
But I would like to add a couple other POVs to my story for reasons.
Hmm.
And um, if I do it, I risk losing my YA mm, uh, genre, um, because some of the other POVs I'd like to add are not young adults. So
Well,
I,
you
I'm
just
I'm
jump from young adult to new adult, so it's not that big of a jump.
It's not, but some people you'll have. I actually have a couple other writer author friends,
Hmm.
and some of them absolutely believe there is no such thing as NA, new author, and
Hmm.
others believe you're going to go traditional. You can't, whatever, and it doesn't matter. I just need to decide if it's going to suit the story or not. If it's
Hmm.
going to make my story better or not to have these other viewpoints. Um, and at the same time, what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, I'd really like to add this viewpoint, but maybe I do like you did, which is that this viewpoint becomes its own novella instead of
Right.
adding it to my story. So,
Right. Well, like in the case of Tiarsis, I did have a, a handful of chapters from his point of view in the first book,
hmm
but then the novella went and told his backstory
yep.
leading up to what happened in the book. Stuff that I
hmm
couldn't really find a place to put in the main book because it just didn't fit.
hmm
But I had that character and it was enough for the story and for the book, but it wasn't enough for me.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
went and wrote more.
And I think that's what I might be doing because I just want to tell all these character stories because I just understand them so well. But we'll see. But that's what I was working on. And sorry to bore everybody with my you know story structure plotter
Not
mentality, but that's
boring.
what I was doing. Okay,
It's not boring at all.
yeah. So that's what I've been working on. And
All
I just
right.
got to say that I actually hit a point where I figured something out, and I'm just like it's exploding. I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, this this is the thing that has been holding." Yeah, I'm really excited
Isn't
about
that the
where my
best
outline
feeling?
is. It is such a relief. It's like a pressure valve.
Yep.
It's
As for
fascinating.
the extra POVs, my advice would be just go ahead and write them, and you can always cut them in editing.
You're not wrong, you know, and I just got to figure out what's important to this story. All I know is that if I do include another POV, if I do, that POV will be nothing about that person. That POV will only be about Aniksha. It's about how they react to her, how they interact with her, her story, her back, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But if I have any other POVs, it will always be about Aniksha's story. It will never change.
Yep. Lots of stories can intersect in a lot of different ways.
Hmm.
All right. Every week, we like to share one sentence from our current works in progress, a single sentence with no context, and in Xtina's case, very dead. Are you
Very
ready
dead.
for
I'm
Dead Darlings?
I'm ready to share my
All
dead
right.
darling. Dun dun dun. Um,
What you
the
got?
closer she, oh, the closer she got to home, the heavier each footfall became, like gravity itself was to like gravity itself was trying to protect her from the truth.
Ooh, ominous.
Dun, dun, dun. What about you? What you got?
It's not his eyes that are shallow, it's his intellect.
Ah, is that dead or alive?
I don't know. It's one of those random, like, little projects that I started. I don't
Mm-hmm.
even know if I'm going to finish it. So, TBD.
Mm,
But
TBD. Dun
TBD.
dun dun. Okay. All right. Enough of that.
Fair
Um.
enough.
Oh shoot! I need to get my dice out. Where's my dice? Okay. Now on to the point of our show and our favorite game. Each week we roll a d20 to help us randomly choose from our perpetual list of 20 scenarios. And then we talk about how it would affect our made up ad hoc worlds. Mr. Hall, are you ready?
Bring it on.
All right. And she rolls. She's rolling, and it comes out to 12. What's
All
12?
right. What if your characters lived underground?
This gives me Clan of the Cave Bears vibe. I don't know why, but what if my characters lived underground? Hmm.
I actually do have some characters that live underground.
You have some,
Not my main
but
characters, but I have some.
well, what if your main characters um were from that world and not the world they are from?
Ugh. I have a feeling a lot of them would be a lot paler. Pasty white. Um, Diets and things would be different. Food would be different because of what you can grow underground. Um, Culture would be different. A lot of things would change, like the social structure in and of itself. I think would change. It would change
Why?
to, well, you're living underground. You're either living in a natural cave system or you're probably expanding on a natural cave system, which means
Hmm.
lots of physical labor. So your society is going to evolve to favor the strong and the hardworking
Why do you think
more
underground would
than
require more physical labor?
you have to get water, which is going to involve some sort of what's the word I'm looking for?
Aquifers,
Some sort of
aquas.
mechanical system. Typically, the water you find underground in caves is not safe to drink. So you're either going to have to filter it or purify it somehow or find another source of water.
Wait. I don't know this fact. Tell me why.
Bacteria, mostly. And
Because the
extremely
sun
high
doesn't
mineral
kill it.
content. Yes. And extremely high mineral content,
Hmm.
which means
Okay.
that you then have problems like kidney stones. Um, so water would be an issue. You would have to have a infrastructure. That's the word I was looking for to purify water or bring water in. You'd have to have some sort of infrastructure to um, grow food underground. You're not going to have a whole lot of livestock in a cave. Just the methane emissions alone would be a massive danger. Um, so you're going to be dealing with things that you can grow in a somewhat dark, generally damp environment, which is going to be a lot of mushrooms and things like that. Um, unless you have an above ground area or some magical means of growing normal crops underground, which fantasy world, totally possible. Beyond that, if you're working on a newer society, you're going to need the ability to expand your environment as the society grows, your population grows. You're going to have to dig tunnels, dig more caverns, connect existing caves and caverns, things like that. And in general, your society as a whole, in my opinion, would lean more and develop more and favor more physical strength.
Huh.
So over time, you're going to end up with a very stocky, hardy kind of people because that's what's favored and that's what's needed. Um, whereas above ground, it broadens a little bit because you don't need as much of that physical strength and physical labor on a daily basis, and you can spread the society out a little bit more and lean a little bit more to specialized trades. And get, like, you have your farmers, you have your soldiers, you have your um, your miller, your wheelers, your whatever, your intellectuals, your artists, things like that. Once your society is established enough to support a, I hesitate to say unnecessary, but that's the word that's coming to mind, skill set. um yeah, that's kind of where that would go. So the world itself, the culture would be very different, and a lot of that logic is, at least in part, why you see a lot of underground cultures tending to be dwarvish. Short, stocky, very strong.
Well, so that's only if you assume that 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 species of people would need the same nutritional um, elements as humans
Right,
do.
right,
If they don't need as much water, they don't have to go get as much water.
right.
If they don't need as much sunlight, then they, you know what I mean? They wouldn't
Hmm.
need to compensate for that. Um,
Yeah.
I think that if I had chosen Anisha to live in under, live underground versus in the Alaskan tundra, things that I would change in my story would be how they track time.
Hmm.
Their life wouldn't be tied to the seasons as much, nor would my story.
No, because a certain depth underground, you have a constant temperature.
You have a constant temperature and a constant level of light, wherever
Hmm.
that source of light is.
Hmm.
I would guess. I would guess that living underground, the tilt of the earth toward or away from the sun would not change. The level of light under the
No,
ground.
it wouldn't.
Well, it depends on the source. I mean, if it was crystals
Yeah,
that are reflecting light, it could.
right.
Um,
But I don't
but
think your average bioluminescent fungus is going to care.
I would agree. However, we don't know how much they know. And
Yeah.
I also think it's really interesting that uh, when we talk about DNA or genetics, mushrooms or humans are closer to each other than either one is to plants.
Mhm.
So you were
That's
talking about
terrifying.
using, it's terrifying. You're talking about using mushrooms as a source for nutrients, but what if mushrooms were how the people evolved? What if they were evolved from mushrooms? And so they're humanoid mushrooms. And, how would that, affect their decision making, their oh, whatever,
My underground world has
because
carnivorous mushrooms.
so they're eating humans, which are closer to DNA to them than plants are. So they're almost cannibalistic in that sense. Um,
Well, I mean, they don't discriminate.
yeah. Um, so I think this is fascinating. It would, it's so even if I were to tell the same story, a young girl is just trying to find a way to fit in because she lacks a skill that everybody else has.
Mhm.
Basic. Just take that premise. Now I take her from the Alaska tundra and I put her underground. The things that would change would be like I had previously mentioned, how they measure time, the lack of seasons and how they measure annual time, how they measure
Oh, yeah.
longer lengths of time. Um, the laws or the morals that would be put into place. It would just profoundly change the backdrop of my story.
Mhm.
I don't think this particular thing would change my story. It would just extremely change the backdrop and the rules that I have set up for my world.
Yeah.
Um even, I still think that my characters would go to university. I still think my characters, would have children. I still think my characters would want to have or would respect obligation to community. I still think they would respect the earth, the planet. It
Yeah.
would just be on what degree they would understand it. It would be fascinating to actually build a huge world where everybody in a book, right?
Mhm.
This is the world and how everybody lives, and then throw a, a, a surface dweller down there.
Oh, yeah.
And now, not like 30, not like what is it? Middle of the journey to the middle of the earth, where you have the surfer dwellers going down to the middle of the earth and trying to figure out what's going on, but actually set the whole story as a person living in underground, and now they
Mhm.
suddenly have a surface dweller, and they're trying to figure out where did you come from. There's nobody who lives on the surface. What are you talking about? You're lying. You can't live under the sun. You would die.
Right.
You know that would be a fascinating story.
That would be fun.
Hmm.
Another one to add to the list for later.
Another book to add to the list.
Yep.
You are not wrong.
In about 10 years when I actually finish Crimson Prophecy.
Ditto. Friggin' ditto.
Right. No, I mean it's actually an interesting question. I feel like we went through it really quick, but it poses a lot of questions and we both have very different angles on it.
I think it shows that not only is the point of view, which we talked about early in episode, this episode, what we talked about in this episode earlier, is important to how the story traverses. But I think the setting is also extremely important, and how your character relates to that setting gives so much mm,
Mhm.
uh, ambiance, atmosphere to the story.
Yeah. So like for my first book, I dropped Anara into a completely different continent that she's never seen or been to before and knows nothing about.
Hmm.
So everything was
But
fresh, new and bright and different.
so the things that would be new in a new continent would be culture, would be weather,
Mhm.
would be culture, weather, ethics, right?
Mhm.
But
Topography, geography, wildlife,
yeah,
plants, all of it. Um,
But there's a
it's
huge difference between the Sahara Desert and the rainforest
hmm
versus the a typical place on the surface of the Earth and 10,000 leagues under the surface of the Earth.
oh yeah,
It's
absolutely. It'd be really hot down there for starters. But yeah,
oh,
even just in a single continent, say you look at North America, you've got the far reaches of Alaska and then you have the deserts of southern Mexico. Like
hmm
going into rainforest and craziness, and then you've got like the East Coast where you are that's completely different. You've got the Intermountain West where I am that's completely different. And that's all just one continent. So dropping a character into a new continent doesn't mean that everything's going to be the same. Even
hmm
culturally, it's nuts depending on where you go. I have desert cultures and I have like coastal fishing kind of cultures and bigger cities that rely on trade and things like that, and it's all in the same landmass, but it's all very different. And that gamut of society, I think, is what helps paint an interesting picture and an interesting world. So like even if your book takes place in the middle of nowhere, so by example, I don't know if you've ever read it. It's an older book and I think it's out of print, and I don't know a whole lot of people that have read it. But there's an older book set during the Cold War about a spy plane pilot who got shot down over Siberia. It's called Last of the Breed, and it was written by Louis L'Amour, who's best known for westerns, but this is not a western.
hmm
And this pilot is he's a Native American guy, and he is on foot, surviving in the bush, finding his way back to the US by way of the Aleutians, and basically following that migration path back into Alaska to get back to the US.
Huh.
It's a fascinating book, and I absolutely love it. I highly recommend it. But from where he crashes to where he ends up at the end of the story, there's a lot of different cultures that he crosses through: small villages, resistance groups, military towns. Like, it's a massive variety of people and places and sights and sounds and smells and living in the woods and the winter and the summer and like all this kind of stuff. And it keeps it interesting. He's on a very linear path going from point A to point B, and you know that's the destination and you know that's what he's trying to do. But in the process, it stays interesting specifically because of the culture.
Culture is fascinating to me.
Oh, I
If
know.
so, if I could go to school for anything, it would be what's it called? Anthropology, right? Is the
hmm
study of people.
hmm
Archae Archaeological anthropology, I think is what it's
hmm
called, is what I would love to degree in. So you're studying civilizations that have died and figuring out their culture based on the evidence that's available today. That sounds friggin' fascinating to me.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and I think maybe a majority of fantasy writers out there, not so much sci-fi, not so much literary fiction, but I would say a majority of the fantasy authors out there are intrigued by culture, whether that
hmm
be military culture, political culture, people
hmm
culture, society, whatever. I
Yeah,
think that
absolutely.
is something that fascinates us.
Like on the scale of the anthropological disciplines, I think my interest would go in a slightly different direction into forensic anthropology.
That's what the word I was looking for. Forensic
Forensic?
anth- anthropology is absolutely something I would get a degree in today. I don't
hmm
care that I'm 100 years old. I'm not 100 years old, but I don't care that I'm near it.
Close enough,
Closer to that than the zero. So,
right?
anyways,
I feel that.
you feel it, but you're not that. You're just a young chicken.
Hey, it ain't the years, it's the mileage. All right. Well, that was fun. If you're a world builder, newbie or not, and would like to be on our show, we would absolutely love to have you. That includes all of you D&D, tabletop RPG, game masters, writers, authors, anyone who creates worlds. You can let us know by going to our website, whatifsouthisup.com, and leaving us a message, or you can reach us through our Facebook page.
And, we're always interested in what if questions to add to our list. If your world has something interesting about it and you'd like to pose it to our world, and by the way, if you want to keep this thing secret about your world, but you just want to pose it, well, we're happy to do anonymous takes. But if you'd like to pose it to us and see how it plays out in our worlds or how we'd interpret it, we'd love to hear from you. So, Mr. Derek, how can folks find you on the inter-thingy, webby thingy?
I am an inactive lump these days just because I'm so damn busy, but my website is derekhallauthor.com, and you can find me as dhallauthor on just about all of the socials.
Well, I am uniquelyxtina.com, and I can be found on just about all the socials as uniquelyxtina, and I really, really, really hope to get back onto TikTok and do some TikToking to, talk about what we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time when we should have another special guest joining us.
Ooh, yes!
South is Up.
Next time.
Yeah.
We have another guest.
We have friends now.
We have friends now. We were not the only friends to each other. We have others. Yay.
We have friends. And we drag them into doing silly things on the internet.
I love it.